Okay, so we're going to talk about a topic right now that I feel like is very near and dear to my life because I'm being defined as this. The word millennial. How do y'all feel about the word millennial?
So what is it really? Because you have the people born, is it the people born like 2001? Or?
So apparently it is people born between the years of 1981 and 1997. That is a huge, that's 16, what? That's 16, 15 years?
Yeah.
That's, okay, so.
I haven't taken a math class in 7 years.
I haven't taken one since I was 20, so I'm 26 now. So, yeah. What do you think? And I actually have some interesting facts. I have 74 facts about millennials. We're probably not gonna get through all of them. But I wanted to read some and I wanted to get your opinions. But like, how do you feel? Because you were born in 1981.
I was born in 1983. Give me my 2 years.
She was born in 1983. You were born in 1990, what? Three. I was born in 1991. And so we're all, according to this, identified as millennials. How do you feel about being a millennial?
Well, my thing is, I feel like whenever someone is saying something about millennials, like it's usually negative. Mm-hmm. But because of like, oh, you're always on your phone or everything is, you know, about social media or whatever it is. But it's like, we've seen both sides of it. Because I remember having like that really crappy computer and then all the different phones and stuff like that up till now. And so it's like, what do you expect us to do? Like, it's here. What do you want? Mm-hmm. But then you get mad when you can't use it and you call me.
Right. No, yeah. And I think too, it's weird because we've literally grown up with that kind of technology, and half the time I feel like if we weren't consuming this technology, half of you wouldn't have jobs. So, you know, what's really like, you know what maybe it's the excessive use of technology.
The fact that you two are taking from the angle of like technology and how they talk about it and how it's negative. I think it's not just technology. I think it's the demeanor and the mentality and the point of view and the behavior of the millennials as a generation, as far as how we interpret life and how we react to our society. But yeah. I mean, I think this is a very, very, very big subject. We won't be able to cover it in 5 minutes. But what are those facts you have? And maybe that can spur the conversation.
Well, okay, we'll get back to it, I guess.
No, go ahead.
So when you were talking, so when you said, like, the millennial attitude, like how you react to situations and things like that, personally, like with my job, a lot of the kids I see, in order for them to be under 18, they have to have been born like 1999 on. And so a lot of them that I see like the way that they talk to me, a person who is, you know, in that position, like over them, or their parents, and all these different situations. And it's like, I would not be here today. Like, I have kids coming in with their parent who are there for like domestic battery against their parent, and I'm appalled. I'm shocked and appalled. So it's like, but they are not categorized in that millennial thing.
No.
Well, remember, whenever in any of these age groups, they categorize, but you have to keep in mind that each individual, based on their upbringing and based on their life experiences, is going to be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. We fit in the category of millennials because of when we are born, but we're not going to have all of the same characteristics as all of them. So like those individuals, they're coming from a different platform than just the generic. When they label them, usually because there's a class that we teach at my job called Generational Differences. And we go back from the veterans all the way up through the baby boomers, Generation X, to kind of show how each one of those generations developed. And we base it, what the research bases it on is what that generation experienced. The veterans experienced the Great Depression. They experienced the First World Wars and things like that. So they're going to have a different outlook on life and a different behavior when it comes to certain general things like jobs and how they interact and how they do that. Same thing with baby boomers. And then with us, we have our life experiences. So as a general populace.
But I also think there's a sense of, right. But I also think there's a sense of right and wrong that is that, you know, we put an expectation of right and wrong on what we think is right and wrong, what other people think is right and wrong, when there aren't right and wrong. There's just different ways of dealing with things. We're having our set fall apart, folks. But there's a sense of like, okay, for example, like the blind obedience thing. You know, we talk about that a lot, like personally. We don't do that.
No.
As a millennial generation, we don't do that.
Tell me why.
Your father's generation, who was considered a baby boomer, right? He is all about.
They still do it, and the veterans did it.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think that? Do you think there's a right and wrong with that, or do you think that's just a generational gap, or do you think it's a little bit of both?
I think it's because of the development. The veterans experience something a certain way. So when they raise their children, they experience things a certain way. When the baby boomers got started, I know I have a comment, booby baby. Okay. Like I have a conversation with my mother a lot, and she'll say like when she was growing up, she experienced things and she didn't like it. So she said within herself, when I have children, they will not experience that. So because of her experiences, she made sure that when she had me, there were different experiences that she shielded me from or made sure I had. And then you also have to look at, who was it? Before us were the Generation Xers. And that's where you start to see a whole lot of independent people. The latchkey kids. So mom and dad are both working. So that means you coming home yourself and you're essentially raising yourself. So there becomes a sense of independence and a sense of, well, I don't have to depend on you to tell me exactly what to do because I can make my own decision. And what happens is each generation, because of their experiences, changes and adapts, and that feeds into what the rest of us experience. Right. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong. However, I think it just depends on the situation. We now have that sense of independence that there's a feeling that we don't need to listen to others. And not that it's right or wrong. It just depends on I think it depends on the situation. Because with that sense of independence, I know a lot of people, they throw around the word entitlement. And working academically and in the hospital, I have to admit, sometimes I get straight up ashamed when I see some of my generation walk in and it's like they come in and they expect for the red carpet to be thrown out and you're gonna do this because you own me. And I've had students who've been my age and younger and it's like, well, I'm paying you. And I'm like, no, you're not paying me. I get my salary from the school. And they're paying me to make sure that you don't kill nobody when you go out into the field. And every field that I've worked in, whether it's been when I was in the hospital or in the school or back in the hospital, there's always that certain group within our generation that have that sense of entitlement where I don't have to work hard. You should be able to hand it to me. It's not everybody, but when I do see it, I see it the most in our generation because when I have students that are older than me, they don't necessarily come with that. They come with a different sense of I can usually tell them what they need to do and they do it. However, to that caveat, I've had those older people that have come and I don't think it's entitlement, but it's a sense of, I don't even know what to call it. Like they still aren't successful. Almost just like those people who are entitled aren't successful in what they're trying to do.
And people who do exactly word verbatim.
Yeah, so I obviously it's not just a generational thing. It's just something else, a characteristic that's not named.
But I wonder if there is, you know, in every generation or whatever, like the baby boomers and all of us, if, you know, there is, like even like the first generation post-slavery, you know, the first generation to be born whose parents weren't slaves or who, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if in every generation there was a generation of a section of entitlement or a field of entitlement in each group. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder like how that has grown or how, you know what I mean? Like, is it new to, you know what I'm saying? People,
it probably is not new. I just think that it's almost, and I hate to use it as a reference and then laugh about it, but it's like people say how the persecution that we as African Americans have been going through with the police and stuff, how it's not new. It's just technology has now put it on the forefront. Same thing. We're able to communicate so easily through the bandwaves, and it's like, oh well, this generation is doing that. Well, you know, it may be the other generations were doing the same thing when they reached a certain age point. And then they grew out of it. Because entitlement, we're born with that.
And you should feel some sense of it in some sort of way. You should feel entitled to be treated fairly, to be treated right, to be treated the way you should be treated. But it's when you feel like you're entitled to more than what you deserve. That is what is not cool. And I do agree that I find that in my generation. I don't know if you have also found it in your generation. But I've also found working with kids, because I've worked with kids as well. You work with kids,
right?
Like I see it all the time. Kids think that you owe them something, and they have not done anything for. They don't even behave well, and you have the unmitigated gall to believe that I owe you something, and you can't even sit down when I say sit down.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
But then to me, and I hate to say it, because it goes back to the parenting.
It absolutely.
But sometimes it doesn't.
It really
But
does.
sometimes it does. But sometimes it doesn't.
You say no, it does, but no, it doesn't.
But no, sometimes it does. That is true. But there are. I have worked close, because I worked at the after school program.
Yes.
I've worked with parents who I know for a gosh darn fact was tearing their kids up, was doing everything that they could. Some of them weren't, but to doing everything that they could to make, being disciplined.
Maybe everything they know how to do.
I mean, discipline, even asking me, like, what do you think I should do? I'm giving them stuff, they're trying all this stuff, and their kid is just not acting right. And you know what, to me, and I'm being for real, it hasn't been many, it's been like maybe 2 or 3, and I've worked with almost 1,000 kids probably at this point. But, there's been about 2, 3, maybe 4 kids that I have worked with that, mama's putting him in therapy. They thinking he got something mentally wrong with him. They've gone to all kind of psychologists. They saying ain't nothing wrong with him.
It's the devil.
Loose hair.
Loose hair, you demon spawn.
I mean,
but you know what I mean? Like,
no, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, like, it depends on when you start as well.
Exactly.
Because I would be doing like visitations between kids and their parents, and oh my God, I remember I had this one mom and kid, and the kid, I don't know what got into him. I don't know, but he was like kicking the TV, he was throwing stuff, all this other stuff, and so the mom's over there, and she, you have until the count, and she's counting, she counted to 43, 43, she counted to 43. Now me, on the other hand, because I've had, my share of instances where kids are like, and I was like, what do you want? Like, are you done? Like, you have to do that. You're not going to sit here. I'm not about to like overextend myself, because first of all, I have other things to do. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm not going to sit here and count to 43 with you. You are going to sit down because I told you to sit down, and you're breaking things in here, and your mama ain't going to pay for it. So it's about when you start. You can't wait until they're 15 and be like, okay, I'm going to try to discipline you now, because now they don't.
That is also true. And I have seen that case, but I also have seen cases where kids they are mature enough in their brain in a weird way to know that at the end of the day, I can still.
You can't say mature.
Maybe not mature, but
they're smart. They're intelligent.
But they're smart, and they understand that I can do what. But
that's because they've tried it. Children are the result of their environment. Mm-hmm. And if I as a child know that I can do this, and if I do this, I'm going to get this reaction. And even if they're stubborn. They're smart and stubborn little things. When I was with my mom and dad, I always go back to them because they're just so funny. And I was the only child, and I'm not spoiled at all. Mama said that I wasn't even starting to walk yet, so I was still in the crawling stage, so maybe not even a year. And she was home with me, and she said, I knew when my dad was coming home. At a certain point, I would crawl to the door, and when he picked me up, I would start in my baby language and point to my mother. Like
you was telling
Like I was telling on her. And my wonderful father, who was still young in his marriage then, would reprimand my mother in front of me. And then when he would leave, she would tear me up again. But it was a habitual thing until finally, and I knew I could get away with it because once Daddy came home, but if that would have continued on, then who knows what would have happened to me then? Because then I know I can do what I want to, and Daddy's going to take us.
That's so true. You never know what's going on in somebody's house.
You never know what's happening in the house. It wasn't until she had to have a heart to heart with him and say, "Look, who the wife?
Yeah,
me or her?" And they had to come together as parents, and then that had to break in me.
Because this is, to me, more of an attention-seeking generation than.
I would agree with that because that's what the selfies and I need to get more likes and more followers because there's a sense of thrill.